The restaurant glowed with golden lights, crystal chandeliers, and soft jazz in the background. Wealthy guests laughed over expensive wine, their forks clinking like music. In the corner, at the very last table, sat a little girl no one paid attention to. Her name was Lila, only 4 years old. Her dress was wrinkled, her tiny shoes mismatched, and her eyes full of something far too heavy for a child to carry. Across from her sat Vanessa, her stepmother, dressed in a glittering gown. Her smile looked perfect from a distance, but her words were sharp and cold. "Eat it," Vanessa whispered, pushing a half-finished plate of cold chicken toward the child. "Don't you dare embarrass me tonight." Lila hesitated. The meat was dry and stiff, her throat too tight to swallow. Around them, waiters moved quickly, pretending not to see. Her small hands trembled as she lifted the fork. "Mommy," she whispered softly, "I can't eat this anymore." Vanessa's smile froze. Her eyes flashed with anger as she hissed, "Then starve for all I care." She reached across the table and slammed the fork down, making the people nearby glance over. But they quickly looked away, because no one interfered when it wasn't their business. A tear slid down Lila's cheek. She tried to wipe it away, but her little hand was shaking too much. She lowered her head, her lips quivering. Across the room, someone noticed. A tall man in a dark tailored suit had been watching quietly from his seat by the window. His name was Rowan Hale, the billionaire hosting the gala that night. His expression, usually calm and distant, suddenly hardened. He stood up slowly, eyes locked on Vanessa and the trembling child. The chatter in the room faded into silence. And then he spoke, his voice cutting through the air like thunder. "Who told this child to eat trash?" Before that night of glitter and shame, Lila's world was much smaller, just a cramped apartment that always smelled of detergent and sadness. Her real mother had died when Lila was barely 2. She didn't remember her face, only a warm lullaby that sometimes echoed in her dreams. Her father, Ethan Carter, worked 2 jobs to survive. He was kind, honest, but tired, so tired that he never saw the shadows creeping into his daughter's life. When Ethan met Vanessa, she seemed like salvation. She was graceful, polite, and always smiled at the right time. "Every child deserves a mother," she said sweetly the day they met. Ethan believed her. He thought love could rebuild what life had broken. But love, he would soon learn, can also blind. At first, Vanessa played the perfect wife. She packed Ethan's lunch, kissed Lila's forehead before bed, and filled the apartment with perfume and order. But when Ethan left for work, her face changed. Her eyes turned cold. She called Lila useless, spoiled, unwanted. The little girl didn't understand why. She only knew that if she cried, things got worse. Dinner became punishment. If Lila spilled a drop of milk, Vanessa made her kneel until her knees turned purple. If she didn't finish her plate, she'd be sent to bed hungry. At night, Lila would whisper into her blanket, "Mommy, come back. I promise I'll be good." But no one came. The neighbors sometimes heard muffled crying, but Vanessa always smiled and said, "Kids are dramatic." Ethan never suspected anything. When he came home, Vanessa wore kindness like a costume. Lila would run to him, hiding her bruises under long sleeves. "I fell at school," she'd say. And Ethan would sigh with relief, kissing her forehead. Little did he know, every day his daughter was fading. One silent tear, one empty stomach, one broken dream at a time. And somewhere deep inside, Lila began to believe she truly didn't deserve love. Lila's world was divided into 2 colors, gray and gold. Gray was her home, a tiny, dim apartment on the poor side of the city where cracked walls whispered every argument and every lie. Gold was the world of Vanessa, where glittering gowns, champagne, and fake smiles ruled. Lila didn't belong to either, just trapped somewhere between them, too small to understand why her existence seemed to ruin everything. Every morning, she woke before sunrise to the sound of Vanessa's heels clicking on the floor. "Get up, useless," her stepmother would hiss. Lila would rush to clean the table, pack her own lunch, and stay out of sight. The food Vanessa gave her was always the leftovers. Bread edges, cold rice, a single apple slice. "You don't need much," Vanessa said. "You're not worth much." When Ethan came home, tired and worn, the apartment magically transformed. Vanessa turned soft, smiling, kissing his cheek. She's been naughty again, she'd sigh. Ethan would glance at Lila, see her lowered head, and feel disappointed. He didn't notice the faint red marks on her wrists or the fear in her eyes. One evening, while washing dishes, Lila looked out the window and saw a group of children laughing under the streetlight, eating ice cream with their parents. She pressed her palm against the glass, wishing she could step into their world just for a minute. Someday, she whispered to herself, I'll go somewhere people smile for real. But that dream felt far away. The next week, Vanessa forced Ethan to take them to a high-end gala, claiming it would improve their social status. She even bought herself a new gown. But for Lila, she picked a faded hand-me-down dress from the thrift store. As the car drove toward the glittering lights of the Grand Hotel, Lila held her breath. She didn't know that inside those golden walls, her life would change forever. Because that night, someone powerful was about to notice her pain. Vanessa was the kind of woman who could make people believe anything. With her perfect hair and soft voice, she looked like every man's dream and every neighbor's admiration. But behind the lipstick and pearls was a heart made of ice. She didn't marry Ethan for love. She married him because she thought he was connected to powerful investors. When she realized he was just a struggling delivery driver, bitterness began to rot her from the inside. Every day she reminded him of what he couldn't provide. If you were half the man you pretend to be, we wouldn't live like this, she'd snap, slamming plates in the sink. And when Ethan left for work, she took that anger out on Lila. Your father is useless and you're just like him, she'd whisper cruelly. A burden. Lila tried to stay quiet, to make herself invisible. She drew pictures on scraps of paper, mostly of families smiling together, something she had only seen on TV. Vanessa once found one of those drawings and tore it in half. Stop dreaming, no one wants you, she said, letting the pieces fall like ashes. But something inside Vanessa was beginning to crack too. She had debts, hidden credit cards, fake jewelry bought on installment, and a desperate need to appear wealthy. The upcoming gala, hosted by Rowan Hale, the billionaire who had just invested in Ethan's company, became her new obsession. If I make the right impression, she told herself, I'll never have to live poor again. She rehearsed every word, every smile, every glance. Ethan, exhausted, agreed to go just to keep the peace. Lila didn't want to go, but Vanessa ordered her to. You'll sit quietly and not ruin my night, she warned. As Vanessa zipped up her glittering gown that evening, she looked at herself in the mirror and smiled coldly. Tonight, she whispered, everything changes. But she had no idea that the person who would change everything wasn't her. It was the little girl she despised. The black limousine stopped in front of the Grand Marcellus Hotel, its entrance glowing like a palace. Paparazzi lights flashed as guests in silk and diamonds stepped out, their laughter echoing through the marble halls. Ethan adjusted his old suit nervously, feeling out of place. Beside him, Vanessa shimmered like a queen, clutching her gold clutch tightly, and behind them, half hidden, was little Lila, wearing a pale yellow dress that was 2 sizes too small and shoes that pinched her toes. Inside, the air smelled of roses and expensive wine. A chandelier bigger than their apartment hung above their heads. Ethan's company had been invited because of a new partnership with Hale Industries. For him, this was just another work event. For Vanessa, it was her stage. Stay quiet, she hissed at Lila. Smile if someone looks at you. Don't speak unless I tell you. Lila nodded, clutching the edge of her seat when they finally sat down. Her stomach growled softly. She hadn't eaten all day. The plates on the table looked beautiful, but Vanessa had told her, "You'll eat after everyone else. Don't make a mess." The evening moved slowly. Music played. People clapped for speeches they barely listened to. Lila's eyes wandered to the buffet table where other children giggled as they ate cupcakes and fruit. She whispered, "Mommy, can I have one too?" Vanessa's smile froze. She leaned closer, her voice sharp but quiet. "You? Eat that? You'll ruin my image. Sit down." When the waiter came to clear leftovers, Vanessa pointed at one of the plates. "Give it to her," she said coldly. "She's used to scraps." The waiter hesitated, uncomfortable, but obeyed. The food was cold, tasteless. Lila tried to swallow, but her throat ached. Tears welled in her eyes as she whispered, "I can't eat this anymore." Guests nearby glanced awkwardly, but one man at the far end of the hall stopped moving completely. Rowan Hale's eyes locked onto the trembling child, and in that instant, something inside him broke. The clinking of glasses stopped as Rowan Hale rose from his seat. Conversations froze mid-sentence. His voice carried through the hall, deep, sharp, impossible to ignore. "Who told this child to eat trash?" he said again, louder this time. All eyes turned toward Vanessa's table. Lila sat frozen, the fork still trembling in her tiny hand. Vanessa's painted smile cracked. "Mr. Hale," she stammered, standing up quickly. "There must be some misunderstanding." But Rowan wasn't listening. He walked across the hall, every step echoing like thunder. The crowd parted silently. He crouched beside Lila, his expression softening when he saw the bruises on her wrists. "Sweetheart," he said gently, "who gave you this food?" Lila looked at him, confused, frightened. "My mommy," she whispered. "She said I should eat it or she'll be mad." A ripple of whispers spread through the guests. Cameras lifted. Someone began recording on their phone. Vanessa's cheeks turned pale. "She's exaggerating," she snapped. "Kids lie all the time. She's just sensitive." Rowan's gaze hardened. "Sensitive?" He pointed at the plate. "That food is cold. You're sitting here in designer jewelry while this little girl eats leftovers like a beggar." His tone made the room shiver. Ethan rose, unsure what to say. "Sir, please, this is a private matter." "No," Rowan cut him off. "This is not private when it happens in front of hundreds of people. A child deserves dignity, even here." Lila buried her face in her hands, trembling. Vanessa grabbed her arm, hissing, "Stop crying!" The sudden motion made the child yelp in pain. Gasps erupted. A waiter dropped a tray in shock. Rowan stepped forward, his voice cold as steel. "Let go of her!" Vanessa froze, caught between rage and fear. Rowan signaled security. "I want this woman escorted out. The child stays with me." Vanessa's eyes widened. "You can't do that!" But she could see in his face this wasn't a request. And when Rowan gently lifted Lila into his arms, every camera in the room turned toward them. The world had just witnessed the truth. The room buzzed with whispers as Rowan Hale stood in the middle of the ballroom, holding the trembling little girl in his arms. Photographers and reporters who had been invited to cover the gala began snapping pictures. Flash after flash lit the scene like lightning. Vanessa's face twisted in panic. Her perfect mask had cracked, and there was no fixing it. "Put her down! She's my daughter!" Vanessa shouted, reaching for Lila. Rowan turned slowly, his eyes cold and unwavering. "A mother protects her child. You humiliated her." His words hit harder than a slap. Guests murmured, shaking their heads. Vanessa looked around, searching for someone to defend her, but every familiar face avoided her eyes. Ethan, pale and confused, finally stepped closer. "Mr. Hale, please, this is my family." Rowan interrupted, his voice calm but commanding. "Then you should act like a father." He handed Lila to one of his assistants and pulled out his phone. "I want child protection services here, now." Vanessa gasped. "You can't call the authorities. This is ridiculous." Rowan stared at her. "You're right. What's ridiculous is a grown woman starving a child in a room full of food." His words echoed through the hall. Vanessa tried to speak again, but the sound that came out was broken, desperate. Meanwhile, Lila clung to the assistant's shoulder, eyes wide and wet. For the first time, someone was standing up for her. She didn't fully understand what was happening, but she felt something warm inside, a spark of hope she'd never known before. Ethan stood frozen, torn between shame and disbelief. "Vanessa, tell me this isn't true," he whispered. Vanessa's lips trembled, but no words came. Cameras continued flashing. The once glamorous evening had turned into a public reckoning. Rowan took off his jacket and draped it gently over Lila's shoulders. "You don't have to be afraid anymore," he said softly. The child looked up, her small voice barely a whisper. "Are you an angel?" Rowan's eyes softened with sorrow. "No, sweetheart," he said quietly. "Just someone who wishes he had arrived sooner." And that was the moment the story stopped being a scandal and became a rescue. The gala ended in chaos. Security escorted Vanessa out, her heels clicking furiously against the marble floor as she screamed about lies and humiliation. Reporters surrounded Rowan, asking endless questions, but he ignored them all. His focus was only on the little girl sitting quietly in a chair near the stage, wrapped in his jacket, her tiny feet dangling above the ground. Lila was staring at the chandelier, watching the lights shimmer like stars. When Rowan knelt beside her, she turned her head slowly, unsure whether to smile or hide. "You did nothing wrong tonight," he said softly. "Do you understand?" She nodded faintly, though her eyes showed confusion. "Mommy said I always make trouble. That's why people leave." Rowan's chest tightened. He had heard those exact words before, from his daughter years ago, his late daughter Emily, who had died in a car crash at only 5, the same soft curls, the same timid way of speaking. Even the faint dimple on her left cheek, it was uncanny. He reached into his wallet and pulled out a small, worn photo. Emily grinning, holding a stuffed rabbit. He glanced between the picture and Lila. His breath caught. You look just like her," he murmured. Lila blinked. "Who?" "My little girl," Rowan whispered. "She went to heaven a long time ago." Lila tilted her head. "Heaven is where people stop hurting, right?" Rowan's throat tightened, unable to speak. He simply nodded. A police officer approached quietly. "Mr. Hale, we'll take statements tonight. The child will need medical checkups." Rowan stood, his voice steady but filled with emotion. "I'll handle everything. She's safe now." As the officer walked away, Rowan looked down at Lila again. Something deep inside him stirred, an ache that felt both painful and healing. He didn't know it yet, but this child wasn't just someone he saved. She was about to become the key to a past he thought was buried forever. The next morning, the news exploded. Every major outlet carried the same headline: "Billionaire saves abused child during gala." Photos of Rowan carrying Lila dominated every screen. Comment sections flooded with outrage and sympathy. People called Lila the little angel in yellow. Vanessa, meanwhile, sat in her car, parked on a quiet street, staring at her ruined reflection in the rearview mirror. The world she had built on lies was collapsing. Her makeup was smudged, her hands trembling. She had spent the night hiding at a friend's apartment, scrolling through the videos that exposed her cruelty to millions. Every click felt like another slap. How dare he humiliate me, she hissed, slamming her phone on the dashboard. But deep down, panic clawed at her chest. She knew this wasn't just a scandal, it was the beginning of her downfall. Later that day, Ethan came home early, his face pale. He had seen the footage too. "Vanessa," he said quietly, "tell me this isn't real." She forced a bitter laugh. "They twisted everything. That man, Rowan Hale, he planned this. He wants to destroy us." Ethan frowned. "Why would he? He didn't even know us." Vanessa hesitated. Her mind raced, searching for something, anything that made sense. Because men like him always need a story, a hero moment. I was just an easy target. But Ethan wasn't convinced. Lila looked terrified, Vanessa. "You called her useless in front of everyone. What kind of mother does that?" Her eyes flared. "You think you're any better? You left me to handle everything while you worked your pathetic job." Ethan turned away, disgusted. Maybe working 2 jobs was the only way to protect her from you. For the first time, Vanessa felt real fear. Not of the cameras, not of Rowan, but of losing control. Her mind darkened with one desperate thought. If she couldn't fix her image, she'd make sure no one took Lila away from her. And in that chilling silence, Vanessa decided to fight back, not with remorse, but with revenge. By the following afternoon, the video had reached over 20 million views. News anchors replayed the moment Rowan Hale confronted Vanessa again and again. The public adored him for his courage, calling him the billionaire with a heart. But what no one knew was that behind his calm expression, Rowan was restless. Something about that child wouldn't leave his mind. At his penthouse, Rowan stared at the photo of his late daughter, Emily, next to a screenshot of Lila from the gala. The resemblance was haunting. His assistant, Marla, noticed. "Sir, are you sure you're ready to get involved this deeply?" Rowan exhaled. "She deserves a chance to live without fear. I couldn't save Emily. Maybe I can save her." Meanwhile, Ethan sat alone in the police station, being questioned by child services. He looked broken. "I didn't know," he kept saying. "I thought she loved my daughter." The officers exchanged sympathetic glances but took notes anyway. Outside, Vanessa stood by the car, sunglasses hiding her swollen eyes. Her lawyer whispered, "They have enough to press charges for neglect. You need to stay quiet and cooperate." But Vanessa wasn't listening. Her gaze fixed on the tall man walking toward the station. Rowan. He looked powerful, unshaken. Rage flared inside her. "He's trying to steal my life," she thought bitterly. Rowan ignored her glare and went straight to the officers. "I'll take responsibility for the child's welfare," he said. "I can provide medical care, housing, education, everything she needs." Vanessa snapped. "You can't just buy my family. She's mine." Rowan turned to her slowly. "You lost the right to say that the moment you hurt her." The room went silent. Even Vanessa's lawyer stepped back. As Rowan walked away, Vanessa's hands clenched into fists. Hatred replaced her fear. And in that very moment, she swore that if she couldn't destroy him publicly, she'd find a way to destroy him personally. Ethan sat on the edge of the hospital bed, his hands trembling as he watched Lila sleep. Her small fingers clutched Rowan's jacket like a lifeline. The doctors had said she was malnourished, dehydrated, and emotionally traumatized. Every word stabbed him like a knife. How could he have missed the signs? Rowan stood near the window, his face half hidden by the afternoon light. He had been there for hours, quietly paying for every medical expense, refusing to leave until Lila was stable. "She'll need time," the doctor had told them. "Time and safety." When Lila stirred, Ethan leaned forward. "Sweetheart, it's Daddy. Can you hear me?" Her eyes fluttered open, uncertain, afraid. Then she whispered, "Please don't let her take me back." Ethan froze. He wanted to tell her everything would be okay, but the words got stuck in his throat. Rowan stepped closer, his tone calm yet firm. "She won't hurt you again, I promise." Lila looked up at him, her lips trembling. "You promise like heroes do?" Rowan smiled faintly. "Exactly like that." For the first time, Lila smiled, a fragile, fleeting smile that cracked Ethan's heart. Tears filled his eyes. "I should have protected you," he whispered. "I was supposed to be your father." Rowan placed a steady hand on his shoulder. "You still can be. What matters is what you do now." Ethan nodded weakly. "I'll do anything. I just don't know how to fix this." Before Rowan could respond, the door burst open. A nurse hurried in, followed by a police officer. "Sir," the officer said to Ethan, "we need your statement, and there's more. You should see this." He handed over a tablet. A new video was trending online, Vanessa crying dramatically in an interview, accusing Rowan of kidnapping her stepdaughter for publicity. Rowan's eyes darkened. "She's trying to twist the story." Ethan gripped the tablet, his jaw tightening. "Then we'll show her what truth really looks like." Because this time, the father wasn't going to stay blind or silent. The following day, the internet exploded again. But this time, Vanessa controlled the story. In a teary live interview, she wore no makeup, her voice shaking perfectly on cue. "I'm a mother," she sobbed, "and that man, Rowan Hale, used my child to polish his image. He took her without permission. He's trying to make me look like a monster." Clips of her crying spread like wildfire. Hashtags like #JusticeForVanessa began trending. Sympathy shifted. People who hadn't seen the full video started calling her a misunderstood mother. At the hospital, Rowan watched the broadcast silently, his jaw tight. "She's good," he muttered. "She knows exactly how to play the world." Ethan slammed his fist on the table. "She's lying. She's twisting everything again." Rowan nodded. "Then we'll respond the right way, with proof." He turned to his assistant. "Marla, get every surveillance video from the gala and from their apartment building. I want timestamps, witnesses, everything." Meanwhile, Vanessa met secretly with a gossip reporter in a coffee shop. "He's hiding something," she whispered. "I'll make sure people know who he really is." But while Vanessa plotted, Rowan's legal team worked faster. Within hours, they uncovered digital evidence. Voice recordings from the gala staff, a nanny's testimony, and even text messages Vanessa had sent bragging about training that spoiled brat. By evening, Rowan held a press conference. Calm, precise, unshakable. "The truth doesn't need theatrics," he said, showing footage of Vanessa yelling at Lila. Gasps filled the room. The hashtag flipped instantly to #ProtectLila. Somewhere in her apartment, Vanessa screamed and threw her phone against the wall. Everything was slipping away again. "No," she hissed. "He won't win." She opened her drawer and pulled out a small USB drive, a secret she had hidden for years. If he wants war, she whispered, I'll give him one. Because in Vanessa's twisted mind, destruction was the only way to survive. Rain poured down that night, turning the city into a blur of neon and reflection. Inside St. Mary's Hospital, the corridors were quiet except for the steady beeping of machines. Lila was asleep again, her small chest rising and falling softly. Rowan and Ethan stood by the window, both lost in thought. Then the door burst open. A nurse screamed. Vanessa stormed in, drenched from the rain, mascara streaked down her cheeks, her eyes wild with rage. "Where is she?" she shouted. "You think you can steal my daughter from me?" Ethan jumped to his feet. "Vanessa, stop! You're not supposed to be here!" "I am her mother!" she screamed, pointing at Lila. "You can't replace me with that billionaire's pity!" Rowan stepped forward, calm but commanding. "You need to leave before you make this worse." Vanessa laughed, a sharp, broken sound. "Worse? You think this is bad? You have no idea who you're dealing with." She reached into her bag and pulled out the USB drive, waving it like a weapon. "You want truth, Mr. Hale? I have it right here. You think you're a hero, but your hands aren't clean either." Rowan's eyes narrowed. "What are you talking about?" Vanessa smirked. 10 years ago, your company covered up a car accident. The same night, your precious daughter died. That car belonged to me." Ethan's face went pale. "What?" She turned to him, venom in her voice. "Yes, he knew. His lawyers buried it. I should have gone to prison, but money buys silence, doesn't it, Rowan?" The room went dead silent. The rain beat harder against the windows. Rowan's voice dropped to a whisper. "You're lying." Vanessa's smile widened. "Prove it." She tossed the USB drive onto the table. "Everything's in there." For the first time, Rowan looked shaken. He picked up the drive slowly, staring at it like it might explode. And as lightning flashed outside, he realized the past he'd buried was about to destroy everything he'd built, including the child he swore to protect. The storm outside raged on, lightning flickering across Rowan's face as he held the small USB drive in his hand. The weight of Vanessa's words pressed down like a stone on his chest. Ethan stared at him, disbelief written across every line of his face. "Is it true?" he asked quietly. "Did your company cover something up?" Rowan's jaw tightened. "I don't know," he said honestly. "But if there's even a chance it's real, I'll find out." Vanessa smirked. "Oh, you'll find out all right. I've waited 10 years for this." She stepped closer, her voice trembling between anger and triumph. "That night, I hit something. Or someone. I panicked. Your people came before the police did. They told me to stay quiet, that they'd handle it. And guess what, Rowan? They did. They buried your daughter's death to protect your name." The words sliced through the air. Ethan gasped. "You killed his child?" Vanessa's expression flickered. Pain, regret, and bitterness all at once. "It was an accident. I didn't mean to. But they made sure I could walk free. You think I became this monster for fun? I had to live every day with that secret eating me alive." Rowan's hands shook as he inserted the USB drive into his laptop. A video file appeared. Grainy security footage, timestamped the night of the crash. A black car, Vanessa's car, skidding through the rain. Then the sound of impact. Rowan's knees nearly gave out. His voice broke. "You killed her. And they let you go." Vanessa's tears finally fell. And every time I looked at Lila, I saw her face. Maybe that's why I couldn't love her. She reminded me of what I'd done. Ethan turned away, disgusted. "You're sick." Rowan closed the laptop slowly, his face unreadable. "No," he said, voice trembling but steady. "You're finished." He picked up his phone and called his head of security. "Turn the evidence in. Every file, every name involved. No more secrets." Because tonight, Rowan Hale wasn't just seeking justice. He was ready to face his own ghosts. By sunrise, the truth had gone viral again. But this time, no one could twist it. Every major channel replayed the leaked footage from the USB drive. The world saw everything. The accident, the corporate cover-up, and Rowan Hale's press conference that followed. Standing before a wall of flashing cameras, he spoke without a script, his voice raw but steady. 10 years ago, Rowan began, my daughter was killed in a car accident. I was told the driver was never found. Today I learned the truth, that my own company hid her killer, and that killer stands before the law again. Vanessa's arrest video played side by side with his speech. She screamed at the officers, calling Rowan a liar, but no one believed her anymore. The evidence was too clear. The same public that once pitied her now called her a monster. Hashtags flooded social media. #justice for Emily, #protect Leela, #no more lies. Ethan watched the broadcast from the hospital waiting room, his hands clenched tightly. He felt both grief and relief. Grief for what his daughter had endured, and relief that finally, the truth had a voice. Lila sat beside him, playing with the stuffed bunny Rowan had given her. She didn't understand all the noise, but she could tell the grown-ups were different now, softer, kinder. After the broadcast, Rowan visited the hospital once more. The cameras followed him, but he didn't care. He stopped by Lila's bed, knelt down, and smiled gently. "You were very brave," he said. "Because of you, a lot of people saw what real courage looks like." Lila tilted her head. "Are bad people gone now?" Rowan hesitated, then nodded. "They're facing what they did. That's what matters." Outside, Vanessa was led into a police car. Reporters shouted her name, but she kept her head down. For once, there was no makeup, no mask, just the hollow face of a woman finally exposed. And as the sirens faded into the morning, it was clear. Every lie she told had finally met its end. Days turned into weeks after Vanessa's arrest, and for the first time in years, silence in the Carter home no longer felt dangerous. It felt peaceful. Lila's laughter began to fill the corners of rooms that once echoed with fear. She still woke up from nightmares sometimes, reaching out for her father's hand, but Ethan was always there now. Really there. He'd left his job at the delivery company and started working with Rowan, managing one of his charity foundations. "You'll have time for her," Rowan had said. "That's the only wealth that matters." Every afternoon, Lila attended therapy sessions arranged by Rowan's team. The doctors were gentle, teaching her that tears didn't mean weakness and that she was safe now. She learned how to draw again, bright colors replacing the gray scribbles she used to make. One day, she gave Rowan a picture. 3 people holding hands under a sun. "That's you, me, and Daddy," she said proudly. Rowan smiled, his throat tightening. "It's beautiful," he whispered. He framed it in his office the same day. At night, he often found himself walking through his garden, the one he'd built in memory of his late daughter, Emily. For years, he'd avoided it because the pain was unbearable. Now he brought Lila there on weekends. She'd pick flowers and talk about her favorite cartoons, her tiny voice carrying in the breeze. One evening, Lila looked up at the sky and said, "Do you think Emily can see us?" Rowan paused, his heart swelling. "I think she can," he said softly, "and I think she's smiling right now." Ethan, standing behind them, wiped his eyes silently. For the first time, all 3 of them stood together, not as broken people, but as survivors of the same storm. Because healing doesn't always mean forgetting. Sometimes it means learning to live with the light again. It was a quiet Sunday morning when the phone rang in Rowan's study. He answered absently, expecting another charity update, but the voice on the other end made him freeze. "Mr. Hale, this is Dr. Patterson from St. Anne's Hospital. There's something you need to see, about Lila's medical records." Within the hour, Rowan and Ethan sat in the hospital office, tension thick in the air. The doctor placed a folder on the table. "While updating Lila's file, we noticed something unusual. Her blood type doesn't match either of yours." Ethan frowned. "That's impossible. I'm her father." The doctor hesitated. "That's what we thought, so we double-checked. The results are confirmed. Sir, Lila isn't biologically related to you." Ethan's breath caught. "What do you mean?" Rowan leaned forward, his heart pounding. The doctor continued carefully. "We ran a comparative DNA test with hospital archives. Lila's blood matches another file, one from 10 years ago. A baby girl born the same night your daughter Emily was delivered, Mr. Hale." Silence filled the room. Rowan's vision blurred for a moment. "You're saying—" "Yes," the doctor said softly. "Lila is your biological daughter. The babies were accidentally switched that night during the chaos after the car accident." Ethan's face went pale. "So my real daughter, she—" The doctor lowered his eyes. "She didn't survive." The world seemed to tilt. Rowan covered his mouth, fighting back tears. "All these years, I thought I lost her forever." Ethan reached across the table, his hand shaking. "She may not be my blood, but she's still my child." Rowan nodded slowly, eyes glistening. "And she's mine, too." At that moment, something shifted between them. Pain, love, and destiny woven into one truth neither could deny. Outside the hospital window, the sky began to clear after days of rain. Because fate hadn't taken everything from them. It had simply taken the long way home. For hours, Rowan and Ethan sat in silence in the hospital parking lot, neither able to process the truth that had just shattered and rebuilt their worlds. Lila, the little girl they had both fought for, was not the daughter Ethan had raised, nor the ghost Rowan had mourned. She was impossibly both. Ethan rubbed his temples, his voice raw. "So all this time, I was raising another man's child, while mine was gone before I even knew her." Rowan looked at him, his eyes heavy but kind. "And all this time I thought mine was gone forever, but she was being loved by someone else. Maybe that's what saved her." Ethan shook his head slowly. "You don't owe me kindness, Rowan." Rowan smiled faintly. "I owe you everything. You gave her life when I couldn't." They sat quietly, watching the world move on outside. People walking by, cars passing, unaware that two fathers had just traded grief for something much deeper. Inside the hospital, Lila was drawing again, humming softly. The nurses adored her. She had no idea how many lives her tiny existence had changed. When Rowan and Ethan returned to her room, she looked up and beamed. "Daddy, Grandpa," she chirped, holding up her drawing, a big house with 3 stick figures and a dog. "That's us. We're a family now." The men exchanged a glance, both smiling through tears. "Yeah," Ethan whispered, "we are." Later that evening, Rowan made an announcement on live television. "I once believed money could fix everything," he said, "but I learned that love is the only real fortune worth having. My daughter, our daughter, taught me that." Public opinion shifted again. People didn't see a scandal anymore. They saw redemption. Vanessa's trial was set for the following week. Justice was closing in. As Rowan tucked Lila into bed that night, she asked softly, "Do people ever get second chances?" He brushed her hair back, smiling. "Sometimes, sweetheart, and sometimes second chances come disguised as little girls who refuse to give up." Because for Rowan and Ethan, Lila wasn't just a miracle. She was the proof that fate still had mercy. The courthouse was packed the morning Vanessa's trial began. Reporters crowded the steps, cameras flashing as she was led inside in handcuffs. Gone was the polished woman who once smiled under chandeliers. Her hair was messy, her eyes hollow. But even now, she tried to keep her chin high, whispering to her lawyer, "They'll never break me." Inside, the tension was suffocating. Ethan sat beside Rowan in the front row, Lila safely at home with Marla. The prosecution began with the footage from the gala, followed by the hospital records, and finally, the confession video from that stormy night. Each word was another nail in Vanessa's carefully built coffin. When it was her turn to speak, Vanessa stood, her voice trembling. "I didn't mean to hurt anyone," she said. "I was young, scared, everyone abandoned me." Her eyes darted toward Rowan. "You think you're a saint? You buried my secret for 10 years. Rowan didn't respond. The judge's gavel slammed. "Enough!" The courtroom fell silent as the verdict was read. Vanessa Carter, guilty of child abuse, obstruction of justice, and manslaughter, sentenced to life in prison without parole. The words hung in the air like thunder. Vanessa's face went white. "No," she whispered. "This isn't how it's supposed to end." She was led away as the cameras flashed, her voice breaking into sobs that echoed down the hall. For once, no one looked at her with pity, only relief. Outside, Ethan breathed deeply, as if taking in fresh air for the first time in years. "It's over," he murmured. Rowan placed a hand on his shoulder. "No," he said quietly. "It's just beginning." That afternoon, Rowan announced the creation of the Emily Foundation for Child Protection, in honor of both his daughters, one lost and one found. Ethan agreed to run it, dedicating his life to protecting children who had no one to fight for them. As they stood outside the courthouse, the sky began to clear, sunlight breaking through the gray, because justice had finally done what love alone could not, restore dignity to the innocent and deliver fate's promise to the guilty. A full year passed after the trial. The world had moved on, but for Rowan, Ethan, and Lila, life had only just begun. The scars of the past still lingered, yet they were no longer open wounds. They were reminders of how far love and truth could reach. Rowan's mansion, once silent and cold, had turned into a home filled with laughter. Lila had her own room now, painted with stars and clouds. She kept a framed photo on her nightstand. One side showed Ethan holding her as a baby. The other showed Rowan's late daughter, Emily. "So I don't forget who's watching over me," she'd say every night before bed. On the anniversary of Emily's passing, they held a small garden ceremony. The air was warm, the roses in full bloom. Ethan stood beside Rowan, holding a candle, while Lila placed a white flower on the memorial stone. "Thank you," she whispered softly, "for giving my daddy and grandpa back their smiles." Rowan knelt beside her, his eyes misty. "No, sweetheart," he said, "you gave us back our lives." That evening, the family attended the first charity event for the Emily Foundation for Child Protection. The hall was packed. Journalists, families, and children who'd been rescued through their programs. Lila wore a small blue dress and held the microphone tightly. "When someone helps you when you're sad," she said, her little voice trembling but strong, "never forget to be kind back, because kindness is what saves people." The audience stood and clapped, some wiping away tears. Rowan and Ethan hugged, proud beyond words. As the lights dimmed and applause filled the hall, Rowan looked up toward the ceiling where the light shimmered softly. For the first time in 10 years, he felt peace, not the cold silence of loss, but the quiet warmth of forgiveness. Outside, fireflies danced in the night air, the city glowing with life again. Because in the end, it wasn't wealth, revenge, or fate that saved them. It was love, in its purest, simplest form, reborn through a little girl's courage to say, "No more." So that's how our story ends, my dear friends. You're still here, right? If you've stayed with us until this moment, maybe something in this story has touched your heart. Maybe it reminded you that even in our darkest hours, kindness still exists. Life doesn't always give us what we want, but it always gives us what we need to grow. As the Stoic philosopher Marcus Aurelius once said, "What stands in the way becomes the way." Sometimes pain, betrayal, or loss isn't there to destroy us. It's there to shape us into someone stronger, gentler, and wiser. Lila's story reminds us that love can heal even the deepest scars, and that justice, though slow, always finds its way home. It's a message for every soul that's ever been hurt. You are not broken beyond repair. You are still becoming. If this story reached a quiet place inside you, share it. Let it travel to someone who might need it tonight. Hit the like button, leave your thoughts below, and don't forget to subscribe. Because here, we tell stories that remind you that hope, no matter how small, can change a life. We're in this together, always.